Hi, my name's Robert. I come to you as an automobile enthusiast that have maintained, serviced, and repaired my own vehicles in excess of 30 years. I've had a car that lasts over 400,000 miles. The current car that I'm driving has over 220,000 miles on it. It's a 95 model. So I hope you can benefit from the information I share. Thanks for tuning in. Hey, this is Robert. I'm going to change the alternator on a Mini Cooper S Series. I think it's a 2002. The alternator just cut out, so I'm going to go ahead and replace it with one that's a reman. Here's all the tools I used to do the job. The job took me 2 hours. You got a something to catch the coolant in, Phillips screwdriver, 13 millimeter box in, 10 millimeter box in. You can't get nothing else on that lower alternator bolt. I got a 10 millimeter ratchet, 3/8. I also use that to take the serpentine belt loose. I got the breaker bar, long needle nose pliers, and a 7 millimeter screwdriver with the to get the bolts out of the original alternator. First thing I did was went on ahead and put the car up on jack stands. Actually, not on jack stands, on ramps. I'm going to try to do this job without removing a wheel. And set the parking brake. Open the hood. In case you don't know it, the hood release is on the passenger side of the car. Once you release it from the inside, under the driver's side headlight is the latch. That will release it the rest of the way so you can lift it up. As you can see, this is tight quarters with this job. Most of the instructions that I've read talks about taking the whole front bumper assembly off, and then this front cap, and maybe even dropping the radiator down. I'm going to try to sneak it past this stuff here, which is going to include removing this radiator hose here. So I'm going to go ahead and drain some coolant out of the system. I'm going to go ahead and disconnect the negative, and actually whenever I do alternators, I disconnect the positive lead on the battery as well. So this has a battery cover. Make sure that clip is loose. Then you pull this seal up off of the back of the battery compartment cover. And now you have the battery deal there. Look like it may have a quick disconnect here. I'm going to unscrew that. But I'm going to take the negative off first. Looks like it's probably a 10 millimeter, pretty standard. Okay, the battery has been disconnected. I don't see any kind of drain cock on the radiator, so I'm going to take this hose loose on the driver's side to drain coolant out of the radiator and the water pump. Okay, I went on ahead and disconnected the drain lower radiator hose. I drained some fluid out, and then I reconnected it because it didn't need to be disconnected for that long. Just get some fluid off, so when I take that top hose loose, I shouldn't get coolant leak down the motor and stuff. Next thing I'm going to do is get this little cluster of items here out of my way. Looks like some kind of fuel line clipped into a bracket. So I'm going to take that bracket loose, unplug this stuff, and get this as far out of my way as I can, because I'll never get that alternator out past this stuff. Okay, I got this stuff loose here. It looks like some kind of fuel pressure, maybe purge valve. Put the little screwdriver under there, pry that loose a little bit. I pressed on the sides of these clips and they popped loose. Unplugged the wire from the bottom, did the same thing to the thing there. It had a little tab on top of the bracket, pried that to one side, slid that out of the way. My next step, I took the little hose off here, squoze this clamp, push that over a little bit, and then I hit the clamp down there and got that side and just removed that whole little piece of the hose that was here. So that's the piece of hose I just took off. My next step, I'm going to take the serpentine belt off. The 3/8 inch ratchet fits into the tip of the tensioner hole. I'm going to use a little breaker bar pry it toward the back of the car and take that belt loose. My next step is to take these 3 bolts out of the alternator. I got one there, and then one down below on the front, and hopefully I'll be able to flip that alternator out and have enough space to scoot it up past the rest of this stuff. Alright, I got the 3 bolts out of the alternator. I flipped it over a little bit. Next thing I need to do is unscrew the electrical lead and unplug that other wire down there somehow. So that's what I'm working on, unplugging it so I can see if I can get it out of this slot. Alright, to get this alternator in and out of this tight space, you're going to have to flip it over, take the back cover off. I also took the regulator off the back of it, which is easy to do inside that hole. And when I came out of the hole, I put a little pressure on this front cap and worked it out on an angle with the big side of the bracket out first. I pushed the hose in, and then the back of the alternator, where those electrical leads are right there, was getting hung up on the little seal on the front of the cap. So I pulled that 5th seal up and it came out. When I went to put it in, I was expecting the same amount of resistance, and the thing practically fell into the hole. So I'm going to go ahead and put the voltage regulator back on it. I'm going to put the back plastic cap on it, and then probably plug in that electrical lead and put the other lead on the back, and then start feeling for those bolts. Okay, going back in, I put the voltage regulator back on, 3 bolts. Now I'm going to put the cap back on it, and I think it only has 2 or 3 screws. Okay, I put the screw on that side of the back cover. I put the screw in the front side of it. I put some of this electrical dielectric grease, or whatever you call it, and plugged in the plug. Now I'm going to flip it in place and put the lead on it right there with a 13mm bolt. Alright, I got the 3 bolts in and tight. Next thing I'm going to do is take the tension off the serpentine belt tensioner and loop this serpentine belt back on the alternator. Alright, next thing I'm going to do is take the wire that comes from the alternator, slide it back in its clip there, and then plug this one in on top of it after I put some grease on the connection. Next thing I'm going to do is take this vacuum pump or whatever it is, slide it back on the bracket, hook up the electrical connection to the bottom of it, hook up the line on the bottom and the line that comes across to the top of it. Okay, I got the upper radiator hose elbow on there, and I got it on down in there. So I got that out of the way. Okay, I got the battery connected. When you put this battery in, you can spray it with that battery, electrical connector protection. But back here on the back, it has a special notch that the back of this cover has to go in. So you want to make sure that you get that negative ground cable lined up. So I'm going to go ahead and put that cover on it. Alright, now I'm going to go ahead and put the coolant back in the motor. I believe this is where the coolant goes, and I'll be all done and ready to put that final cover here back over the fuel injectors and stuff. So, okay, the only way to really check to make sure this alternator works is to check the volts. I actually have a scan gauge. It has an OBD2 tool. You come down here under the floor and your connection has a flap on it. So I'm going to go ahead and plug my tool in there, and then I'm going to start the car and take the reading off the gauge. Okay, as you can see, the battery's 10.8, 10.9 when we started the car before. it didn't move at all. So I'm going to go ahead and crank the car up, see if this alternator gives us 13 or so volts. Look like we need a jump. Okay, we got the car started. As you can see, it's rated at 14 volts, 14.1 volts, so we're good to go. If you feel that this information was beneficial, please like it and share it with your social media friends. Go ahead and subscribe to my page so you will get notification of future videos that I post. You can feel free to visit my website, robertspainter.com, post questions, and thanks again for watching.